Good evening, my friends. This is once again Surendra. Thanks a lot. Appreciating making comments in my previous videos. Highly appreciative. I'm just going to talk about sustainable development once again, continuing on the same rhythm. But it talks about like the objectives of sustainable development, and also talks about various different things such as like class, caste, language, and regional barriers. These objectives are a charter of liberating one's economy from the clutches of exploitative mindset which has depraved nations and have defied their biomass wealth. Briefly, I'm gonna read them out. Not the entire number of objectives, just a couple of. To maintain these fastest, to maintain the standard of living of the largest number of people with equity and justice, the consideration of transboundary and cumulative impacts and decision making has to be realized. Equity, it is talking about, and equality as well. Of course, when we read different constitutions existing across the globe, countries practicing them, and particularly talking about Indian constitution, there are a good number of articles and provisions which talk about and also protect and safeguard equity and equality among human beings, like equity is there, gender equality is there, economy economical equality is there, and all possible dimensions are being covered by equality provisions and equity provisions. Similarly, in sustainable development, there is a provision of equity and emphasis of equity and equality. Now, the second point is also again important. It talks about conserving and making protections of natural resources from the misuse and wasteful consumptions. Of course, we are using natural resources and using them, consuming them, but it should not be misused, and at the same time should not be wastefully consumed. That has to be kept in mind constantly, because another thing is that we have to keep in mind about the future generation. We keep using natural resources unnecessarily, using sort of misusing them and consuming them in such a manner that we don't think about the future generation, and as a result they experience paucity, and they struggle having access to those natural resources. That should not be our practice, but our practice should be that we also have access to those natural resources, and our behavior, our interaction with those natural resources should be in such a way that they are also sufficient for rest of the generations in the times to come, once we sort of are through with those natural resources, with our life on this planet earth. Now another, I'm going to just read out another which is very important here. I'm just going to be, keep in mind, I'm talking about the sustainable development and their resources, how they have to be used. The third dimension, the point, it talks about innovative new technologies and scientific techniques which work in unison with laws of nature and not opposed to it. They have to be implementation of innovative technologies and scientific techniques, but at the same time those natural resources should only be used. They should not be manipulated, and they should not be sort of over exaggerated. Their consumptions should not be overused consumption. We should not go for that, and we should also not twist the very nature of those natural resources. So there are good number of resources and a good number of points on sustainable objectives, their development. We're going to be talking about them later on, but for this video I think these number of informations are sufficient. And we should always bear in mind, yesterday also I talked about in my last the video which I rolled out yesterday, it talks about judicious use of natural resources. How will that happen? It will only happen when we have scientific methodology and scientific approach and understanding to use those natural resources. Of course, because of course I agree that we have access to those natural resources, but our access should not be such that it has potential to deprive the future generation. We should always keep in mind that a future generation will also absolutely require those natural resources as we do, and so it is our moral social responsibility to let them also have access to those natural resources as we have them. Thanks a lot for listening, watching. This is once again Dr. Surendra Kumar. Hope I've made some points here.